What's up, CJ here, and today I want to talk about cinema lenses. Some things I like, some things I don't like. I don't know. I just picked these up and I actually love them. So I had these lenses for a little while now, and I decided to pick. You know what? Like not too long ago, it's crazy because I feel like it took me so long to get to this point where I was like willing to invest in some equipment for myself, for my business, and all that stuff. I feel like we go through that a lot when we're like cinematographers, videographers, photographers, whatever you want to call yourself. You know, just make up some names, cinematographer, whatever you want to be. When we get to the point where we decide to actually invest in like the thing that we love to do, which is photography, videography. Maybe you like to do weddings, maybe you like to do just like street photography, or even music videos, whatever you want to do. Like once we start to invest in that stuff is where we get to the point where it's like, yo, like what took me so long to do this? I felt like there was this thing missing from my videography that I couldn't like quite put my finger on. And I settled on the fact that it was just that I wasn't like all in. Like I had equipment, but it wasn't equipment geared towards like cinematography. Like I had photography gear still that I was using for cinematography. And you know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with like using a cell phone or using whatever, like a, you know, whatever equipment you have to get videography. But it was like this little thing that was missing, I felt like, in my videography. And I wanted to invest in myself to give myself the confidence that like, yo, you can do it. Because really when you don't invest in yourself, you're telling yourself that you don't believe that you can do it, or you don't believe that you're worth the investment, right? So what I decided to do, I saved up some money and I purchased a whole lot of cinematography gear that I felt like I was missing. I was doing like interviews, I was doing all types of video work with just like the minimal equipment as possible. I didn't have the proper audio gear. I didn't have the proper like gear that I wanted to have. Now this video is turning into a different type of video, right? We're here to talk about the lenses, but that's the reason why I invested in these lenses, right? Along with all the other gear that I invested in. So these lenses, let's talk about some of the pros and cons to these lenses. The pro is the price. The price is so affordable that it was like, why are all these lenses so cheap? Now, like all these lenses together was the price of one of my like Canon lenses, and the reason for that is because the technology in them is it doesn't have autofocus, it doesn't have stabilization, image stabilization, and things like that. All the things that people really rave over and talk about in the lens, these things don't really have too much, you know? And it made me think like maybe those things aren't really necessary. So one thing that I will say about these lenses is that they are super crisp, they're super sharp, and they add a look to my films and my videos that makes it just look a little bit more cinematic. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but I feel like every glass has a look or a feel to it. Even going from the Sigma 18-35 to the Canon 16-35, you can see like subtle differences in the lens and the glass that they use in those lenses that kind of makes things look a little bit differently. The same thing with Rokinon lenses or any type of cinema lens. You're going to have that difference and that feel of a different lens on there. Another thing I will say about these lenses is the bokeh is beautiful. Going down to T 1.5 on these, It's like crazy bokeh, and they're freaking amazing. So along with the really smooth rings here, you have your focus right here that is super smooth when focusing. And then you have your aperture ring here, which is super smooth as well. So it's declicked, and it allows you to just go through your aperture and change that exposure without really moving the camera or touching any buttons. And this really comes in handy when you're shooting like an interview. Maybe you're shooting like a long interview and things start to get darker, or maybe you're using natural light. You can actually just use that dial there and kind of just turn it a little bit and just add a little bit more light into the scene. So those are a few things that I like about it, and a few things that I will recommend, or like reasons why to get cinema lenses or cinema glass. If I would go back, if I could go back and choose like what lenses I bought. Now I bought all of these in a set, and it was very affordable. It wasn't really expensive at all. I bought all these in the set, and completely worth it. But what I probably would do is choose a different set. So because I am shooting right now on the Fujifilm X-T3, all these focal lengths are going to be cropped in a little bit. So I'm not really shooting at true 35mm with this lens, but it is, you know, it looks fine. But it's fine, but that's fine. Or, you know, I'm not shooting at true 24mm with this. So with a full frame lens, I would be. But if I would go back, because I still want to shoot with my X-T3, I would probably give up one of these lenses, probably the 85mm, which I rarely use at all, because that's more like, you know, like 100 something millimeters on the X-T3. I would give this lens up for a 16mm lens. I do use the 50, I do use the 24 and the 35, but I don't use this lens as much. So what I probably do, and what I would probably recommend for people who have crop sensors, is to go with the option for a wider lens instead of the 85. Now the 85 looks beautiful, but it is also different than all the other lenses. Now, when I was reading up on these lenses, the one thing that I did like is that all the rings are the same distance. So if you place all of these down, all the rings for the focal and the aperture are all at the same height. So when switching them on my cinema rig, they all line up with my focus puller. So in reading that, you know, I thought that all of these lenses were the same, but the 85 is slightly different. Actually, the 85, the diameter of the filter ring or filter screw is a little bit smaller than the other one. So they're all 72mm, and this one is, I don't know, I think it's like 67 or something like that. So it's slightly smaller than the other three. So that kind of sucks when it comes to trying to switch filters and things like that. But I will probably eventually invest in just a matte box, or well, I have a matte box, but investing in filters that just go inside of my matte box instead of onto my lenses. But other than that, these lenses are beautiful. They produce wonderful images. I think they just make things look just a little bit more cinematic, and a little bit, I think they just make things look a little bit more cinematic, a little bit more appealing when it comes to creating cinema. I used it on my short film, and they were amazing. I feel like they added some continuity to my shoot and allowed me to just get some cohesive like feel of just beautiful cinematic. That was the main reason why I purchased them. I wanted to do the short film, and I wanted to invest in these lenses for my production company, and I felt like that was the way to go. Now, eventually, I probably will invest in some like more expensive lenses, because once you start investing in lenses like these, you start realizing, hey, like I need like I need a focus puller. I need maybe you need wireless follow focus. You start to realize some of the things that you need to add to your rig and your setup once you start investing in lenses like this. Maybe you want to add more filters, or you want to invest in things like that to make things look even more cinematic. So it's like a rabbit hole, man. Like once you start investing in this stuff, like you start to see where it goes. But I really recommend these lenses. I really recommend using these for cinematography. You can also use these for photography as well. These take great images, great cinematic images as well. So if you're into like cinematic looking images, maybe that's something you can invest in as well. But yeah, these are amazing. Let me know what you guys think, or if you have any questions in the comments below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.